You're not weak, you're just untrained, and that changes everything. You need to understand something clearly before you go any further. Most of what you call personality is actually just repetition. Not who you are, not your identity. Just what you've done enough times that it feels automatic now. So when you say, "I'm weak," or "I can't do this," you're usually not describing a permanent trait. You're describing a trained state. That difference changes everything. What you think is you is often just familiarity. Your brain doesn't care about truth in the way you think it does. It cares about patterns. If you repeatedly avoid difficult tasks, delay starting, quit when discomfort shows up, your brain doesn't label that as failure. It labels it as efficiency. It learns, this is the safest and least demanding route. So next time you try to do something hard, your resistance is not moral weakness. It's your brain doing its job, protecting you from what it thinks is unnecessary effort. That's why you feel stuck. Not because you are incapable, but because your system is optimized for something else. The real problem is not ability, it's exposure. Think about learning to drive. At first, your hands feel clumsy. Your attention is overloaded. Everything feels too fast. Now imagine someone watching you on day one and saying, "You're just not a driver." That would be obviously wrong, but that's exactly what you do to yourself in other areas of life. When you struggle with focus, discipline, consistency, or confidence, you assume it's identity-based. In reality, it's exposure-based. You haven't done it enough times for your nervous system to normalize it. That's it. Why discomfort feels like a stop sign. Here's what's actually happening internally when you face something difficult. Your brain runs a fast calculation. Is this familiar? Is this predictable? Is this safe based on past experience? If the answer is no, it generates resistance. That resistance feels like procrastination, mental fog, sudden fatigue, emotional heaviness. So you interpret it as, "I can't." But it's not a limit. It's a signal saying, "I haven't learned how to stay here yet." Most people obey that signal automatically. That's where the pattern locks in. How weakness is actually created. You don't start weak. You become weak in specific areas through one process. Repetition of avoidance. Every time you avoid, the task stays unsolved. Your tolerance for discomfort decreases slightly. Your identity adapts to lower expectations. It's not dramatic. It's incremental. That's why people don't notice it happening. It's not one big failure. It's 1,000 small decisions that taught the system. Don't go there. The shift from identity to training. Now here's the part that changes how you move through life. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" you start asking, "What has trained me to be like this?" Because training implies direction. If something is trained, it can be retrained. But retraining doesn't happen through insight alone. It happens through controlled exposure. You don't think your way out of it. You behave your way out of it. Why starting feels harder than doing? Most people assume the hardest part is the work itself. It's not. The hardest part is the moment before action, because that's where uncertainty exists. Once you start, reality becomes concrete. You are either doing it or not. There is no imagination involved anymore. Your brain prefers imagination over uncertainty because imagination feels controllable, so it keeps you in delay mode. Planning, thinking, over preparing. Not because you are lazy, but because your system is trying to stay in control. What actually changes you? Not motivation, not discipline, not identity shifts. Only one thing consistently changes behavior. Proof of action. Every time you start despite resistance, stay in discomfort for a short period, complete something small, you are updating your system's expectations. You are telling your brain, this is survivable. And slowly, resistance decreases. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become more adapted. A simple way to see your current situation. Right now, you are not stuck. You are just at a certain training level. Like this. Level 1, avoids discomfort. Level 2, tolerates it briefly. Level 3, works through it. Level 4, operates despite it. Most people think level 4 is a personality type. It's not. It's just repeated exposure at level 1 and 2 until level 3 becomes normal. The real takeaway, you are not dealing with a fixed limitation. You are dealing with a system that learned from your past behavior. And systems don't change through pressure. They change through repetition of new signals. So the question is not, can I do this? The real question is, what am I currently training myself to become? Because whatever you repeat, even in small ways, is what you are reinforcing. And that is what will eventually define you. "I can't" is not the truth. It's a signal you don't understand yet. When you say, "I can't," it feels final. Like a wall. Like a limit. Like something already decided. But in most cases, what you're actually saying is something different. You're saying, "I don't know how to enter this without discomfort." And your brain converts that uncertainty into a conclusion. "I can't do it." That shortcut feels true, but it's not. It's just your mind trying to reduce friction. Why your brain uses "I can't" as protection. Your brain is not built to push you toward difficulty. It is built to conserve energy and reduce risk. So when you face something unfamiliar, your attention increases load. Your body anticipates effort. Your mind predicts failure based on past patterns. Instead of processing all of that complexity, your brain compresses it into a simple output. "I can't." This isn't honesty. It's simplification. It's faster for your system to reject the task than to analyze it. That's why "I can't" often appears instantly, before you even try. The difference between inability and unfamiliarity. There's a crucial distinction you need to learn. Inability sounds like, "I tried multiple times, and the system itself doesn't work for me." Unfamiliarity sounds like, "I haven't stayed in this long enough for it to become stable." Most of what people label as inability is actually unfamiliarity. For example, you think you can't focus, but you've never trained sustained attention without distraction loops. You think you can't stay consistent, but you've never built systems that remove daily decision-making. You think you can't handle pressure, but you've never stayed with pressure long enough to adapt to it. So the problem is not capability. It's exposure duration. Why trying harder doesn't fix it. When someone believes "I can't," their instinct is usually, "I need to try harder." But trying harder often fails because it attacks the wrong layer. If the issue is unfamiliarity, intensity doesn't help. It actually makes things worse because more intensity increases resistance. Resistance increases avoidance. Avoidance reinforces "I can't." So the loop strengthens. This is why people feel stuck even when they are trying. They are increasing pressure without increasing adaptation. What actually breaks the "I can't" pattern? You don't break it by forcing yourself. You break it by lowering the threshold of entry. Not dramatically, precisely. Instead of asking, "How do I complete this?" you ask, "What is the smallest possible version of this that I cannot fail at?" For example, not write a blog post, open document, and write one sentence. Not work out, do one set of movement. Not focus for hours, focus for 5 minutes without switching tasks. This works because it bypasses resistance entirely. Your brain cannot strongly reject something that feels non-threatening. And once you start, something important happens. The system shifts from prediction to action. The moment everything changes is not motivation. It's initiation. The second you begin, even in a minimal way, uncertainty drops. Resistance weakens. Clarity increases. Because now your brain is not simulating the task anymore. It is experiencing it. And experience is what updates your system. Not intention, not thought, not desire, only exposure. Why this matters more than you think. If you don't understand this mechanism, you will keep mislabeling your behavior. You will think, "I lack discipline. I'm not consistent. I'm not capable." When in reality, your entry point is too high. Your system is overloaded before action starts. Your brain is avoiding uncertainty, not work. So nothing changes, even when you try. Because the problem was never effort. It was design. A more accurate way to see yourself. You are not someone who can't. You are someone who hasn't reduced entry friction enough, hasn't stayed long enough for adaptation, hasn't built gradual exposure systems yet. That means your current limitations are adjustable, not permanent, not identity-based, system-based. The core shift. Stop interpreting resistance as truth. Start interpreting it as data. When something feels like "I can't," translate it into "This is too big for my current level of exposure." That single translation removes the emotional weight and replaces it with something actionable. Because now the solution is not self-judgment. It is adjustment. And adjustment is something you can actually work with. The real reason you keep stopping, it's not laziness, it's overload. You think you stop because you lack discipline. But that explanation doesn't actually hold up when you look closely at your behavior. Because there are areas in your life where you don't stop. Scrolling, reacting, consuming, avoiding discomfort. So the issue isn't that you can't stick to anything. It's that your system stops only when it becomes overloaded. Why overload happens without you noticing. Overload doesn't feel like collapse. It feels like, I'll do it later. I'm not in the right mood. Let me prepare a bit more first. I need to figure things out before I start. These don't feel like resistance. They feel reasonable. But underneath, your system is already saturated. Not with physical effort, but with too many decisions, too much uncertainty, too many open loops in your mind. Your brain starts protecting itself by reducing output, so it shifts you toward easier inputs. Why you function fine in low-resistance activities. This is why you can watch content for hours, switch tasks constantly, stay mentally busy without fatigue, because none of those require sustained structural effort. There is no clear start, middle, and finish that demands accountability. But when you try to do meaningful work, writing, studying, building, training, your brain suddenly feels heavy, not because the task is harder, but because it requires sustained direction. And sustained direction creates internal load. The hidden problem: too many open tabs in your mind. Think of your attention like a browser. If you open unfinished tasks, unclear goals, delayed decisions, unresolved pressure, you don't feel it immediately, but your system is constantly running those tabs in the background. So when you finally try to focus, you're not starting from zero. You're starting from a loaded system. That's when even simple tasks feel heavy. Not because they are difficult, but because your mental bandwidth is already occupied. Why discipline doesn't work under overload. Most people respond to this by trying to force discipline, but discipline requires available bandwidth. If your system is overloaded, discipline becomes inconsistent, fragile, short-lived. You can push through once or twice, but it collapses quickly because nothing in the system has changed. You didn't reduce load. You only increased pressure. What actually reduces overload? You don't fix this by doing more. You fix it by removing unnecessary internal weight. That means finishing small pending tasks, reducing decisions in your day, simplifying what you expect from yourself, closing mental loops instead of carrying them. Every unfinished thing in your life is a background process, and every background process drains attention, even if you're not consciously thinking about it. Why stopping is actually a form of self-protection. When you suddenly can't continue, your system is not failing. It's protecting stability. It chooses low-effort tasks, predictable rewards, immediate relief, because those reduce load instantly. So stopping is not random. It's strategic from your brain's perspective. It's trying to keep you functional under pressure. The shift you need to make. Stop asking, why can't I stay consistent? Start asking, what is currently taking up space in my system that I haven't cleared? Because consistency is not just about effort. It is about available capacity. And capacity is not infinite. It is managed. A more accurate way to understand yourself. You are not someone who lacks discipline. You are someone whose system gets overloaded faster than it gets reset. That means your solution is not more motivation, more pressure, more ambition. It is fewer active mental loops, simpler daily structure, smaller entry points into action. Because once overload is reduced, discipline stops being something you force. It becomes something that naturally happens. Why motivation fails you every time, and what actually makes you move. You've probably noticed this pattern by now. You feel motivated, you start something, and for a short time it works. Then it drops. And when it drops, everything slows down with it. That's not a personal flaw. That's a design flaw in how motivation actually works. Motivation is not a driver, it's a reaction. Motivation doesn't create action, it responds to it. Most people get this backward. They wait to feel motivated before they move. But motivation usually shows up after progress, clarity, momentum, small wins, not before. So when you wait for motivation to start, you are waiting for a signal that only appears after you've already started. That's why it feels unreliable, because you're using it in the wrong sequence. Why motivation disappears so fast? Motivation is tied to emotional novelty. When something is new, exciting, uncertain, rewarding in imagination, your brain releases energy toward it. But once it becomes repetitive, effort-based, slow, predictable, your brain stops reinforcing it emotionally. Not because the task got worse, but because novelty disappeared. So motivation fades naturally. The trap: building your life on emotional spikes. If your system depends on motivation, your output will look like this. Strong start, quick drop, long gap, restart cycle. This creates the illusion of inconsistency. But the real issue is volatility. You're not lacking discipline. You're relying on a system that is not designed to sustain behavior. What actually moves you? Structure over emotion. If motivation is unreliable, what replaces it? Structure. Structure means you don't decide what to do in the moment. You don't negotiate with yourself daily. You don't wait for emotional alignment. Instead, you reduce choice. Because choice is where resistance lives. For example, same time start, same first step, same sequence of actions. This removes the need for emotional readiness. You just enter the system. Why starting is more important than feeling ready. Readiness is a mental simulation. It feels like preparation, but it often delays exposure. And without exposure, nothing updates, nothing stabilizes, nothing becomes easier. So you stay stuck in the same loop, waiting, feeling unready, avoiding restarting later. Structure breaks this loop by forcing entry without negotiation. Not aggressively, just consistently. What happens when you remove decision-making? Every decision has a cost, even small ones. When to start, what to do first, how long to continue. These accumulate and create fatigue before the actual work begins. So when people say, "I'm drained before I even start," what they are experiencing is not physical exhaustion. It's decision fatigue. Structure eliminates that by pre-deciding everything. So you don't spend energy entering the work. You spend energy inside the work. The real shift from feeling-based to system-based behavior. You stop asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" and start asking, "What system makes this inevitable?" Because when behavior depends on feeling, inconsistency is guaranteed. When behavior depends on structure, consistency becomes the default. Not because you became more disciplined, but because you removed the conditions that create inconsistency. Why this changes everything. Once you stop relying on motivation, you stop overanalyzing your state. You stop waiting for emotional alignment. You stop restarting every time you fall off. And instead, you re-enter the system regardless of mood. You follow the same entry point. You trust repetition over emotion. This is where stability starts. Not in intensity, in design. The core truth. Motivation is not the thing you build a life on. It's just a signal that something is interesting. But systems are what carry you when interest disappears. So the real question is not, how do I stay motivated? It is, what system keeps me moving when motivation is gone? Because that is the only version of you that lasts. The hidden cost of avoidance. How small delays turn into life patterns. Avoidance doesn't feel like a decision. It feels like relief. You tell yourself, "I'll do it later. I'm not ready yet. I'll start when I have more energy." And in that moment, your system actually calms down. That's why avoidance is dangerous. Because it doesn't feel wrong while it's happening. It feels better. Why your brain rewards avoidance immediately. Your brain is not evaluating long-term outcomes in real time. It is reacting to pressure in the present moment. So when you face something uncomfortable, your stress level rises. Your attention tightens. Your mind predicts effort. Then you avoid it. And instantly, stress drops. Pressure disappears. Relief appears. That relief is the reward. So your brain learns. Avoiding this reduces discomfort. And anything that reduces discomfort gets reinforced. How small delays quietly build identity. No one becomes someone who avoids everything in one moment. It happens through repetition of small delays. It starts like postponing one task, delaying one decision, skipping one uncomfortable action. Each time feels insignificant, but your system records it, not as a story, but as a pattern. When discomfort appears, we exit. Over time, this becomes automatic. You stop evaluating decisions consciously. You just drift away from discomfort by default. Why delay feels harmless but compounds silently. The real danger of avoidance is not the delay itself. It's what the delay trains. Every postponed action does three things. The task stays unresolved. Your tolerance for discomfort decreases slightly. Your brain becomes more confident in avoidance as a strategy. None of this is noticeable in the moment, but it compounds. So what starts as, "I'll do it tomorrow," slowly becomes, "I struggle to start anything important." Not because your ability changed, but because your pattern did. The illusion of future self-control. Avoidance always comes with a hidden promise. "I'll handle it later." But your future self is not separate from your current system. It is the same system under slightly different conditions. So if the pattern today is delay, escape, postpone, your future self inherits that same tendency. This is why people feel like they keep falling behind themselves. It's not randomness, it's continuity. Why avoidance feels rational in the moment. Avoidance survives because it always has justification. It never appears as, I am avoiding this because I can't handle discomfort. It appears as, I need more time. I should be in a better mood. I'll do it properly later. These explanations are believable. That's what makes avoidance hard to detect. It doesn't look like avoidance. It looks like planning. The real cost is not lost time. It's reduced tolerance. Most people think the cost of avoidance is delay, but delay is just the surface. The deeper cost is, your threshold for discomfort lowers. Your initiation resistance increases. Your ability to face tasks without emotional preparation weakens. So over time, the same task doesn't just remain undone. It feels harder to begin than it used to. That's the real shift. Not external, internal. How to interrupt the pattern. You don't break avoidance by deciding to be better. You break it by interrupting the sequence. The sequence usually looks like discomfort, hesitation, delay, relief. To interrupt it, you intervene earlier. Discomfort, immediate, small action. Not full action, small action. Because the goal is not completion. The goal is to prevent escape from becoming the default response. Even a minimal start changes the pattern. The key realization. Avoidance is not laziness. It is a learned strategy for reducing discomfort in the short term. But it has a hidden cost. It trains your system to shrink around discomfort instead of expanding through it. So the real question is not, why do I keep avoiding things? It is, what has my system learned to do every time discomfort appears? Because whatever the answer is, that is what your life is currently built on. Why starting feels impossible, and how to shrink anything until it becomes easy. There's a specific moment most people struggle with. It's not the work itself. It's the moment right before it begins. That pause where everything feels heavier than it should. You know you need to start, but your system resists it like it's something bigger than it actually is. That feeling is the real problem, not the task. Why starting feels heavier than doing. Once you're inside a task, things usually stabilize. But before you start, your brain is doing something different. It's not dealing with reality yet. It's simulating it. And in that simulation, everything feels larger. Effort feels uncertain. Outcome feels distant. Mistakes feel more likely. Pressure feels undefined. So your brain fills the gap with resistance. Not because the task is hard, but because it hasn't been broken into something your system can immediately engage with. Your brain doesn't resist work. It resists unclear entry. Most people think resistance means, I don't want to do this. But that's not accurate. The real trigger is, I don't know how to start this safely. If the first step is unclear, your brain treats the entire task as high risk. Not physically dangerous, mentally costly. So it avoids entry entirely. That's why you can sit for hours thinking about something without moving. Not because you lack discipline, but because the entry point is too undefined. Why big goals always collapse at the start. When you say, I need to get fit, I need to be productive, I need to fix my life, your brain doesn't know what to do with that. Those are outcomes, not actions. So your system gets stuck in translation mode. How do I turn this into a first step? And if that translation doesn't happen instantly, resistance fills the gap. This is where most people quit before even beginning. Not because they are incapable, but because the task never became executable. The solution is not discipline, it's compression. You don't overcome this by pushing harder. You solve it by shrinking the task until it loses emotional weight. Not metaphorically, practically. You take whatever you want to do and reduce it until it becomes almost too small to resist. For example, write a blog becomes open document. Workout becomes put on workout clothes. Study becomes read one paragraph. This works because your brain cannot generate strong resistance to something that feels incomplete and harmless. Why small starts work when big intentions fail? Your system has one priority at the entry point: reduce uncertainty. Small actions do exactly that. They remove ambiguity, pressure, imagined effort. Once you begin something small, your brain shifts from prediction to experience. And experience is always easier to handle than imagination. That's why starting small often leads to continuing naturally. Not because you forced yourself, but because you entered reality instead of simulation. The hidden advantage of too small to fail. When you make the first step extremely small, you remove negotiation. You bypass resistance. You eliminate emotional buildup. There is nothing left to argue with. You are either doing the tiny action or not. And once you do it, something important changes internally. Your system updates. This is safe to begin. That update matters more than motivation ever will, because it lowers resistance for every future start. What actually creates momentum? Momentum is not created by effort intensity. It is created by uninterrupted initiation. Each time you start without delay, resistance weakens, clarity increases, trust in action grows. But this only happens if starting becomes easy enough to repeat. Not heroic, repeatable. The core shift. You don't need to become someone who pushes through resistance. You need to become someone who removes resistance before it forms. That means you stop treating tasks as large blocks. You stop waiting for readiness. You stop negotiating with your mind. Instead, you design entry points so small that starting is almost automatic. Because once you start, everything else becomes easier. And that is the real bottleneck most people never solve. The myth of disciplined people, what they actually do differently. You've probably built a mental image of disciplined people. You imagine them as people who never struggle to start, always feel motivated, have stronger willpower than everyone else, don't experience the same resistance you do. But that image is incorrect. Not slightly incorrect, fundamentally misleading. Because discipline is not a personality trait. It is a system outcome. Why disciplined people look different from the inside. From the outside, discipline looks like consistent action, emotional stability, strong self-control. But from the inside, it rarely feels like that. What actually exists is reduced decision-making, fewer points of resistance, simpler entry into action, less negotiation with themselves. They don't experience less resistance. They just encounter it less often in a way that stops them. The hidden difference is not willpower, it's design. Most people assume disciplined individuals are constantly overriding resistance. But that's inefficient. Humans don't sustain high internal conflict for long periods. What actually happens is simpler. They design their environment and behavior in a way that reduces friction before resistance even appears. For example, same time, same routine, predictable starting cues, minimal choices before action, clear first steps already defined. So instead of asking, should I do this now? The system already answers it. Why relying on willpower always breaks down. Willpower feels strong at the beginning, but it is unstable because it depends on energy levels, emotional state, mental load, external stress. So when any of these fluctuate, willpower collapses. That's why people cycle between intense effort, burnout, avoidance, restart. They are trying to solve a structural problem with a temporary resource. Discipline is not resistance. It is reduced resistance. This is the key shift most people miss. Discipline is not, I can force myself to do things I don't want to do. Discipline is, I have removed enough friction that starting doesn't require force anymore. That's a completely different mechanism. One depends on intensity. The other depends on design. Why consistency looks effortless from the outside. When someone is consistent, it looks like strong identity, high motivation, natural ability. But internally, what they've built is automatic entry points, stable routines, predictable triggers, reduced cognitive load before action. So their behavior is not constantly being decided. It is being executed. That's why it looks effortless. Not because it is easy, but because the difficulty was removed earlier in the system. The mistake most people make. Most people try to become disciplined by forcing harder starts, increasing self-pressure, expecting emotional control. But that approach ignores the real issue. The environment and structure still require too much decision-making. So every day becomes a negotiation. And negotiation eventually leads to avoidance. Not because you are weak, but because you are constantly refighting the same internal battle. What actually changes behavior long-term? Behavior stabilizes when the first step is always obvious. The friction is consistently low. The system removes the need for daily decisions. Action becomes the default, not the exception. This is why small, repeatable systems outperform motivation-based effort. They remove the conditions where failure usually starts. The real takeaway: you don't need to become a different kind of person. You need to stop building systems that rely on fighting yourself. Because discipline is not about being stronger than resistance. It is about designing your life so resistance has fewer places to appear. And once that happens, consistency stops being something you try to achieve. It becomes the natural result of how your system is built. Your environment is quietly controlling you more than your willpower ever will. Most people overestimate their control over behavior. They assume decisions are made in real time, based on logic and intention. But in reality, most of what you do is shaped before you even think about it, by your environment. Not in an obvious way, in a quiet, repeated, invisible way. Why your environment matters more than your mindset. You can have strong intentions, clear goals, high motivation, and still behave in ways that contradict all of it. Because intention operates at the conscious level, but behavior is triggered at the environmental level. Your surroundings constantly send signals like, what is easy? What is available? What is normal? What is expected? And your brain responds to those signals automatically. So even before you decide, your system is already leaning in a direction. How your environment removes the need for thinking. If something is visible, accessible, frictionless, you are far more likely to do it without resistance. If something is hidden, inconvenient, mentally distant, you are far more likely to avoid it. This is not personality. It is proximity. Your brain conserves energy by choosing what requires the least effort to begin. So your environment becomes a silent decision maker. Why discipline collapses in the wrong environment. People often try to fix inconsistency by trying harder, setting stricter rules, increasing pressure on themselves. But if your environment stays the same, your behavior eventually returns to it. Because willpower has to fight. Constant visual triggers, easy distractions, default habits built into the space around you. And that fight is not sustainable. So even strong intentions weaken over time when the environment keeps pulling you in another direction. The hidden force, default behavior. Your environment creates what feels like automatic behavior. For example, if your phone is next to you, you check it without thinking. If your workspace is cluttered, you delay starting. If distractions are one click away, focus breaks easily. You don't consciously choose these actions every time. They are defaults triggered by context. And defaults shape most of your day, not decisions. Why changing yourself without changing your environment fails? People try to become more disciplined, become more focused, become more consistent, while keeping the same distractions, the same layout, the same triggers. That creates conflict because you are trying to build a new behavior inside an old system. And the old system always wins over time, not because you are weak, but because the environment is still optimized for the old version of you. What actually changes behavior long-term? Real change happens when distractions require effort to access. Important work becomes the easiest option. Cues for action are visible and immediate. Default behavior aligns with your goals. You don't rely on resisting temptation. You reduce exposure to it and increase exposure to the behavior you want. This removes internal conflict because you are no longer choosing between equal options. The environment already decided the direction. The real takeaway: you are not constantly choosing your behavior in the moment. You are mostly reacting to the structure around you. So if your actions feel inconsistent, it is not just about discipline or mindset. It is about design. And once you understand that, you stop asking, how do I force myself to do better? And start asking, what in my environment is repeatedly shaping me in the wrong direction? Proof over confidence. How action builds the version of you you're looking for. Most people wait for confidence before they act. They believe confidence is the starting point. But in reality, confidence is not a requirement for action. It is a result of it. Why confidence doesn't come first? Confidence is not something you generate by thinking differently. It is something your brain builds after repeated evidence. Your mind works like a prediction system. It constantly asks, can I handle this? Have I done this before? What usually happens when I try? If the answer is no experience, your brain produces hesitation. Not because you are incapable, but because there is no data. So when you wait to feel confident, you are actually waiting for evidence that has not been created yet. Why thinking doesn't build belief? A lot of people try to think their way into confidence. Positive affirmations, mental rehearsals, self-talk. But thinking does not update the system. Only experience does. Your brain does not trust ideas. It trusts patterns. So no matter how many times you tell yourself, I can do this, your behavior will not change until your actions start proving it. The role of small proof. You don't need big wins to build confidence. You need repeatable evidence. Even small actions count. Starting when you don't feel ready. Completing something you normally avoid. Finishing a task you usually delay. Each one sends a signal. This is possible. And your brain slowly updates its expectations. Not instantly, gradually, but consistently. Why waiting for confidence keeps you stuck. When you wait to feel confident before acting, you avoid the situation. You never gather evidence. Your uncertainty remains unchanged. So your brain keeps the same prediction. This is unfamiliar. Avoid it, and the cycle reinforces itself. More waiting creates less confidence, not more, because nothing new is being added to the system. How action rewires identity. Identity is not something you declare. It is something you accumulate. Every time you act, you create a reference point. You update internal expectations. You shift what feels normal. So instead of thinking, I need to become confident first, you begin to understand. I become confident by acting first. The order matters, because the order determines whether change happens at all. Why proof is stronger than intention. Intention is fragile. It depends on mood, energy, and context. Proof is stable. It comes from lived experience. So when your brain has one instance of success, repeated small follow-throughs, evidence of survival through discomfort, it starts to relax resistance. Not because fear disappears, but because uncertainty decreases. And reduced uncertainty creates confidence naturally. The real mechanism behind change. Change does not happen when you feel ready. It happens when your system collects enough evidence that you can handle what you avoided before. That is why action comes first. Confidence comes second. Always. Not as motivation advice. As a structural rule of behavior. The real takeaway. You don't need to become a different person to start acting. You need to start acting so your system can stop treating you like an untested version of yourself. Because confidence is not the starting point of action. It is the byproduct of repeated proof that you can continue. Becoming someone new without forcing it. The identity shift you didn't notice happening. Most people think change is something you force. They believe you have to. Push harder. Commit more intensely. Completely reinvent yourself. But real change doesn't happen through force. It happens through accumulation. You don't become someone new in a moment. You become someone new through repetition that quietly overrides your old patterns. Why forcing change usually fails. When you try to force change, you are usually working against your current system. That system is built from past behavior, emotional reactions, learned responses to discomfort. So when you suddenly decide, I'm going to be disciplined now, your system doesn't update instantly. Instead, it responds with resistance because nothing in your history supports this new identity. No evidence exists yet that this version of you is safe or sustainable. So you end up fighting yourself. And that internal conflict drains consistency fast. Why identity is not a decision. People often say, I just need to change my identity. But identity is not chosen directly. It is inferred. Your brain builds identity from repeated evidence. What you do under pressure, what you avoid consistently, what you return to automatically. So if your actions don't change, your identity won't either. No matter what you believe intellectually, how identity actually shifts in real time. Identity shifts quietly through repetition. Each time you start when you normally wouldn't, continue when you normally stop, act without waiting for readiness, you create a small contradiction in your old identity. Not dramatic, but consistent. Over time, your brain starts to update the pattern. This is becoming normal behavior. And once something becomes normal, it becomes part of identity. Not because you declared it, but because you demonstrated it enough times. Why small actions matter more than big transformations. Big actions are emotionally powerful, but unstable. Small actions are structurally powerful because they are repeatable. And repetition is what rewires identity. A single intense effort feels meaningful, but doesn't always repeat. A small consistent action feels insignificant, but compounds into system-level change. So identity is not built in breakthroughs. It is built in repetition that does not stop. Why you don't notice the shift happening. The most important changes are almost invisible while they are happening, because they are not emotional events. They are behavioral patterns. So you won't wake up one day and feel different. Instead, you'll realize things you used to avoid feel normal. Starting feels less resistant. Consistency doesn't require negotiation anymore. The shift happens underneath awareness, not above it. The real mechanism behind becoming a new person. You don't replace your identity. You overwrite it. Every action either reinforces the old pattern of avoidance and hesitation, or the new pattern of initiation and follow-through. And whichever one gets repeated more becomes the dominant system. That's it. No dramatic transformation required. Just accumulation of signals over time. The final integration. If you look back at everything, avoidance creates patterns. Overload reduces capacity. Motivation fades quickly. Structure replaces emotional reliance. Environment shapes default behavior. Small starts reduce resistance. Proof builds confidence. Repetition builds identity. All of it is connected, not as separate ideas, but as one system. A system that either reinforces the version of you that hesitates, or builds the version of you that acts without needing permission. The real takeaway: you are not trying to become someone new through force. You are allowing a new version of you to emerge through repetition. And once you understand that, your focus shifts completely. From, how do I change myself? To, what am I repeatedly reinforcing right now? Because whatever you reinforce, even subtly, is what you become. Final conclusion: what actually changes you? If you followed this far, you've probably noticed a pattern. Everything keeps pointing to the same core idea, just from different angles. Not discipline, not motivation, not identity in the way most people think, but systems. How you respond to discomfort, how you start, how you repeat, how your environment shapes you without asking, and how all of it compounds quietly over time. The real misunderstanding most people live with. Most people think change is something dramatic. A moment where you decide differently, feel differently, become different. But that version of change is rare and unstable because it depends on emotion. And emotion never stays consistent long enough to carry a life. So what people experience instead is short bursts of improvement, followed by return to old patterns. Not because they failed, but because nothing structural changed. What actually determines who you become? You don't become who you want. You become what your system repeatedly allows. And your system is built from what you start without hesitation, what you continue under discomfort, what you return to when no one is watching, what your environment makes easy or difficult. This is where your real life is decided, not in intention, but in repetition. Why awareness alone is not enough. You can understand all of this and still not change. Because awareness does not override patterns. It only shows you them. Change only begins when awareness is followed by smaller actions, repeated exposure, reduced resistance, simpler entry points. Without that, insight stays theoretical, and nothing shifts. The quiet truth behind transformation. You are not waiting to become someone new. You are already becoming someone new every day. The only question is, which version is being reinforced? The one that delays, avoids, negotiates, or the one that starts, continues, adjusts? Both are being trained at the same time. One just wins more often based on structure, not intention. What to actually focus on from here? If you strip everything down, it becomes very simple. Not easy, but simple. Your job is not to fix yourself. Your job is to reduce resistance to starting, reduce complexity in your environment, reduce unnecessary decisions, increase repetition of small actions. That is the entire mechanism. Everything else is just explanation. The final shift in perspective. Stop asking, what's wrong with me? Stop even asking, how do I become more disciplined? Start asking, what am I reinforcing right now through my daily behavior? Because that question does not lead to judgment. It leads to design. And design is the only thing that actually changes outcomes. Closing thought. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not lacking some invisible trait other people have. You are simply operating under a system that has been trained through repetition. And anything trained can be retrained. Not instantly, not emotionally, but structurally. One small action at a time, repeated enough times to become the new default.